The calm before the storm. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, planets, and civilizations. Most of these alien empires had been around for thousands, if not millions, of years. Their technology was advanced, and their fleets were powerful. They had seen countless species rise and fall, and to them, Earth seemed like just another insignificant speck in the vast expanse of space. But little did they know, humanity's time had come. In the quiet, distant reaches of the galaxy, a small human ship, the U.S. Providence, was drifting through the stars. The ship, a once humble exploration vessel, now carried the weight of Earth's potential. It was heading back to Earth after months of gathering information from distant planets. The crew on board was calm, their routine simple yet vital. They didn't know that an entire fleet of aliens was preparing to make a terrible mistake. The humans aboard the ship were unaware of the approaching threat. They had no idea that a powerful alien race, the Zoraxians, had set their sights on them. These aliens, known for their speed and firepower, believed that Earth was a weak and primitive planet, unable to defend itself from the might of galactic empires. The Zoraxians had been monitoring Earth for some time and had noticed the small human ship traveling in deep space. To them, it was the perfect target, a vulnerable vessel with a primitive species on board. They assumed that humanity was weak, just like all the other races they had conquered. As the U.S. Providence glided through the stars, its sensors suddenly began to pick up strange signals. The captain, Commander Jacobs, was alerted. He glanced at the screen, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. The ship had been out here for months, and the sensors had picked up various things before: debris, asteroid fields, other ships, but nothing that seemed important. Still, the warning lingered at the back of his mind. He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the data. His crew, busy with their tasks, didn't notice the rising tension. A few minor blips on the radar, nothing to worry about. But Commander Jacobs had learned to trust his instincts, especially out here in deep space. "Lieutenant, run a diagnostic on the long-range scanners," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Aye, Commander," the lieutenant replied, quickly typing into the console. Seconds later, a sharp ping echoed through the control room. The lieutenant looked up, his face pale. "Sir, we've got a fleet on approach. It's too many to be just a patrol." The captain's heart skipped a beat. "How far are they?" "About 10 minutes out at full speed." Jacobs didn't hesitate. He stood up, quickly moving to the ship's comm system. "This is Commander Jacobs to all crew members. Prepare for immediate action. We got company. Battle stations. Now." The crew snapped to attention, the mood on the ship shifting from casual to tense in an instant. Jacob's mind raced, but he remained calm on the surface. He had been through many simulated battles, but this was different. They were not prepared for a full-scale assault, especially not from a race that had been monitoring them without their knowledge. The ship's engines hummed as the crew scrambled to their positions. Jacobs gave his orders clearly, each one a calculated step in preparing for the unknown. "Prepare the defense shields, load the pulse cannons, and activate the drones. Let's make sure we don't go down without a fight." The alien fleet was closing in, its presence unmistakable. It was a terrifying sight for anyone who had never seen such power before. The Zoraxian ships were sleek, sharp, and deadly, designed to intimidate, built to conquer. They arrived in formation, surrounding the human ship. The U.S. Providence was outnumbered, and the odds were not in their favor. As the alien ships took their positions, the humans on the U.S. Providence could only watch and wait. Commander Jacobs was aware that the Zoraxians had underestimated them. They thought humanity was a harmless species, unworthy of a real fight, and that assumption would be their greatest mistake. The Zoraxians' leader, General Xarn, stood aboard his flagship, watching the human ship through his viewing screen. He smirked. He had heard of Earth's mighty warriors, humans who had fought through wars on their home planet. But in space, things were different. He had never seen a species so technologically backward. In his mind, the humans would surrender the moment they realized they were outmatched. "Prepare to fire," General Xarn commanded, his voice cold and confident. "Let's show them how weak they really are." The Zoraxian fleet's guns powered up, their weapon systems charging for the attack. They were ready to destroy this pathetic human ship and make an example out of Earth for the rest of the galaxy to see. But they didn't know what was waiting for them. Humanity's true power had been hidden for too long, and it was about to reveal itself in the most unexpected way. As the alien ships readied their weapons, Commander Jacobs gave the order. "Shields up. Drones, engage." The U.S. Providence suddenly shifted into high gear, its systems coming alive with a power that the Zoraxians didn't expect. As the first wave of energy blasts flew toward the ship, the shields flared to life, absorbing the blows. The human ship didn't flinch, it retaliated. With an unexpected force, the drones launched, their lasers cutting through the alien fleet. The first few moments of the battle were chaotic, but the humans weren't giving up. They weren't the prey, they were the hunters. And the storm was just beginning. The first strike. The alien ships continued to encircle the U.S. Providence, their weapons primed and their intentions clear. In their minds, this was a simple mission: neutralize the insignificant human vessel and move on to more important matters. But the humans on board were about to show them the error of that assumption. Commander Jacobs stood at the helm, his hand steady on the controls. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he wasn't afraid. He had faced impossible odds before, and humanity had always found a way. This time would be no different. "Sir, the shields are holding strong," the lieutenant called out from his station, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "But their weapons are about to break through." Jacobs nodded, his mind racing as the alien ships fired again. The first volley of blasts collided with the human shields, sending ripples of energy across the ship. The ship trembled under the assault, but it held firm. This wasn't just any human ship. It was the U.S. Providence, equipped with some of the finest technology Earth had to offer. "Return fire," Jacobs barked. "Show them what we've got." The U.S. Providence retaliated with precision, the pulse cannons roaring to life. The alien ships, expecting an easy kill, were unprepared for the human ship's counterattack. The first volley of lasers struck one of the Zoraxian ships, tearing through its hull. The alien vessel spun out of control, a burst of sparks and flames erupting from its broken form as it drifted into the void. "Direct hit," Lieutenant Sanders shouted, his eyes wide in disbelief. "We've disabled one of their ships." The Zoraxian fleet hesitated for a moment, thrown off by the unexpected strength of the human vessel. General Xarn, watching from his flagship, narrowed his eyes. He had underestimated the humans, but he wasn't about to make that mistake again. "Focus all fire on that ship," General Xarn commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Take them down. Now." The remaining Zoraxian ships adjusted their formation, aiming their weapons at the U.S. Providence. A second barrage of energy blasts exploded against the human ship's shields, this time with greater force. The ship rocked violently under the assault, and the lights flickered momentarily. But the U.S. Providence didn't fall. Instead, it maneuvered quickly, avoiding the next volley of fire with a swift twist of its thrusters. Jacobs gripped the controls tighter, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The Zoraxian ships were beginning to close in, and it was clear that they were not going to give up easily. But the human ship had something they hadn't anticipated: the drones. "Activate the drone swarm," Jacobs ordered, his voice calm but commanding. The crew scrambled to carry out the order. The U.S. Providence launched a swarm of drones, sleek, nimble machines equipped with advanced weaponry. They zipped through space, darting toward the alien ships with deadly precision. The drones struck first. Their lasers sliced through the Zoraxian fleet, hitting vulnerable points in their hulls. One by one, the alien ships were damaged, their weapons faltering as their systems went offline. The U.S. Providence wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting back with everything it had. "We're holding them off, sir," Lieutenant Sanders reported, his voice filled with a mix of awe and disbelief. "Their fleet is retreating." Jacobs didn't let himself relax just yet. "They'll regroup," he muttered to himself. "This isn't over." And he was right. The Zoraxians weren't done, not by a long shot. General Tarn seethed with rage as he watched his fleet begin to falter. "They are far stronger than I anticipated," he growled. "But no matter. We will break them. Prepare for reinforcements." Back on the U.S. Providence, the crew knew the fight wasn't over. They had won the first round, but they could already feel the weight of the next wave of attacks bearing down on them. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated, but now the Zoraxians were regrouping, and their anger was about to explode. The true test of humanity's resolve was yet to come. The calm before the storm had passed. Now the battle for Earth's survival had truly begun, and humanity would fight until the very last breath. The battle intensifies. The U.S. Providence drifted through the vastness of space, its hull now marked with the scars of battle. The crew had proven their strength, but the Zoraxian fleet was regrouping, and they were preparing for a much more devastating assault. The calm before the storm had passed, and the storm was about to hit with all its fury. Commander Jacobs stood at the helm, his face drawn with determination. The victory they had achieved earlier had been hard-fought, but it had come at a price. The shields were weakened, and the ship's engines were running low on power. They needed more time to prepare for the next wave of attacks that would surely come. "Status report," Jacobs ordered, his voice steady despite the pressure. "Shields are at 75%, Captain," Lieutenant Sanders replied, his hands moving quickly across his console. "Engines are operating at 60% capacity. We've taken some damage, but nothing we can't handle." "That won't be enough," Jacobs muttered under his breath. The Zoraxians had more firepower, more ships, and they were much better prepared for a prolonged engagement. It would only be a matter of time before they overwhelmed humanity's defenses. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Every crew member knew that their survival was in jeopardy. If they couldn't hold off the Zoraxians now, Earth's fate would be sealed. "Lieutenant, send a distress signal to Earth," Jacobs ordered. "We need reinforcements, and we need them now. Our odds are shrinking every minute." Sanders nodded, quickly relaying the message. But Jacobs knew that reinforcements were far away, and Earth's fleet, though strong, couldn't reach them in time. It would be up to the crew of the U.S. Providence to fight off the aliens, no matter what it took. Suddenly, the alarms blared across the bridge. A massive surge of energy was detected in the vicinity. The Zoraxian fleet had returned, and they were far more prepared than before. "They're back," Lieutenant Sanders shouted. "All ships are charging weapons. Brace for impact." Jacobs barked. "Evade their fire. Do whatever it takes to survive." But the Zoraxians were ready. The first barrage of energy blasts came fast and hard, slamming into the U.S. Providence's weakened shields. The ship shook violently as the powerful blast struck, and a sharp pain surged through Jacobs's chest as the deck trembled beneath his feet. The ship rocked again, and the crew struggled to hold their positions. Sparks flew from consoles, and the hum of the engines wavered. The U.S. Providence was fighting for its life. "We can't keep dodging forever," Lieutenant Sanders shouted. "Their firepower is overwhelming." Jacobs didn't reply at first. His mind raced. The Zoraxians had the numbers, the firepower, and the speed. But there was one thing they didn't have: human ingenuity. "Activate the secondary defense system," Jacobs ordered. "The drones." The crew worked quickly, launching another swarm of drones from the ship's hidden compartments. These weren't just ordinary drones. They were advanced weaponized units, designed for high-speed maneuvers and precision strikes. They darted into space, targeting the alien ships with deadly accuracy. The drones struck first. Laser beams sliced through the alien vessels, taking out weapon systems and causing critical damage. The U.S. Providence wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting back with all it had, and the drones were the key to turning the tide. "We've taken down 2 more ships," Lieutenant Sanders reported, his voice filled with hope. "Their formations are breaking apart." The alien fleet was disorganized now, their once imposing formation beginning to collapse under the pressure. But General Xarn, ever determined, was not about to let his forces retreat. He barked orders, rallying his fleet to regroup and launch a new offensive. The battle was far from over. But just as the Zoraxians were preparing for their next wave, Jacob spotted something in the distance, a faint glimmer of light. A fleet. It was coming from Earth. "Reinforcements are here," Jacobs shouted with relief. "Hold the line. We're not alone in this fight." The new fleet, an impressive array of warships, entered the battlefield, their weapons charging as they engaged the Zoraxians. The tides of battle shifted dramatically as Earth's forces joined the fray. The Zoraxian ships, overwhelmed by the combined might of human and Earth forces, began to retreat. The U.S. Providence's crew had held their ground long enough for help to arrive. But the Zoraxians were not easily defeated. General Xarn's face twisted in anger as he watched his forces fall back. "This is not over," he muttered. "The humans have shown their strength, but they will not escape what's coming." Jacobs watched as the Zoraxians retreated into the void of space, but he knew the fight was far from finished. This was only the beginning. The Zoraxians would return, and when they did, humanity would be ready. The U.S. Providence had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The aliens had learned the hard way that the cost of underestimating Earth's power was far greater than they could have ever imagined. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Zoraxian counterattack. The U.S. Providence was battered and bruised, but it still stood strong in the face of the alien assault. Its shields flickered weakly, and its engines were sputtering, yet the crew had fought with every ounce of strength they had. The arrival of reinforcements from Earth had been a crucial turning point, but the Zoraxians were not ones to retreat for long. They had tasted defeat, but they would return with even more rage. Commander Jacobs stood at the helm, his eyes focused on the tactical display. The Zoraxian fleet was retreating, but not for long. They were regrouping, preparing for a massive counterattack. "Status report, Lieutenant Sanders," Jacobs said, his voice steady despite the growing tension in the air. Sanders glanced at his console, his face tight with worry. "The U.S. Providence is holding up, but we've lost some key systems. The drones are down to half their operational capacity, and we've sustained severe damage to the forward shield generators. We need to repair them before the next wave hits." Jacobs frowned. Time was not on their side. The Zoraxians would not allow this defeat to stand. He knew they were capable of quick adaptations, and they would likely return with a new strategy, one that could catch humanity off guard. "We don't have the luxury of time," Jacobs muttered, eyes scanning the battlefield. "Can we repair the shields in time?" "Negative," Sanders replied. "The damage is too extensive. We're running on emergency systems now." A quiet dread settled over the crew. Jacobs knew that without full shields, they would be vulnerable to the next wave of Zoraxian firepower. But he also knew that humanity had something the Zoraxians didn't: determination. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational, making repairs wherever possible. But even with their best efforts, the Zoraxians were not far off. Jacobs could feel the weight of the battle pressing in on him. The entire fate of Earth seemed to rest on their shoulders. Then the message came through. A transmission from Earth. "This is Admiral Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet," the voice said. "We've received your distress signal. The reinforcements are on their way. Hang in there, Commander. You're not alone." Jacob's heart lifted for a moment. Reinforcements. They were coming, but they wouldn't be here in time to help in the immediate fight. The Zoraxians would be back before Earth's fleet could reach them. Time was running out. "Thank you, Admiral. We'll hold the line as long as we can," Jacobs replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. As the transmission ended, Jacobs turned back to his crew, determination in his eyes. "Get ready, everyone. The Zoraxians are coming back, and we're going to show them exactly what humanity is made of." It wasn't long before the enemy ships reappeared on the horizon, their forms taking shape against the backdrop of distant stars. This time, they came in greater numbers, and their formations were tighter, more organized. The Zoraxians had regrouped and were clearly preparing for an all-out assault. "Here they come," Lieutenant Sanders said, his voice tight. Jacobs clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment. "We're not running this time. We stand and fight." The Zoraxian ships opened fire without warning. Energy blasts streaked through space, targeting the U.S. Providence and its allies. The human ship rocked as the first salvo hit. Sparks flew from consoles as the crew scrambled to keep the ship intact. "Return fire," Jacobs shouted, gripping the armrests of his command chair. The U.S. Providence's weapon systems roared to life as its cannons fired, and missiles streaked through space, targeting the Zoraxian ships. The drones, though limited in number, surged forward once again, weaving in and out of the chaos, striking with precision. But the Zoraxians were relentless. Their firepower was overwhelming, and it wasn't long before the U.S. Providence took another hit, this time to its propulsion system. The ship lurched forward as the engine sputtered, sending a wave of panic through the crew. "We've lost forward momentum," Sanders yelled. "We're drifting. We need power to the engines, or we'll be sitting ducks." Jacobs didn't hesitate. "Give everything we've got to the engines. I don't care what systems we have to bypass. Get us moving." The crew scrambled to reroute power, sacrificing non-essential systems to get the engines back online. Time was ticking, and the Zoraxians were closing in fast. If they couldn't get the U.S. Providence moving, they would be easy targets. The battle raged on. The U.S. Providence was a symbol of humanity's strength, but even it had limits. The Zoraxians were brutal, relentless, and highly advanced. Jacobs knew that the ship couldn't take much more. But just when it seemed the odds were too great, a bright light appeared in the distance. Earth's reinforcements. A fleet of ships emerged from hyperspace, cutting through the darkness like a blade. The Zoraxian fleet paused, momentarily stunned by the unexpected arrival. "Earth's fleet is here," Lieutenant Sanders shouted. Jacobs felt a rush of hope. "This is it. Hold on, everyone." With Earth's fleet now in the fight, the Zoraxians were thrown off balance. The battle shifted in favor of humanity, but the fight wasn't over. It was far from over. The Zoraxians would regroup, and the war would continue. But for now, humanity had made a statement. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was not a place to be underestimated. The clash of titans. The Zoraxian fleet, now outnumbered by Earth's reinforcements, hesitated for a brief moment. But that moment was enough. In the vastness of space, where every second counted, humanity's ships surged forward, weapons firing. The tide of battle shifted dramatically. The Zoraxians had underestimated the resolve of the human race, and now they were paying the price. Commander Jacobs gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles turning white. His ship, the U.S. Providence, was battered but still standing, and its crew was fighting with everything they had. The arrival of Earth's reinforcements had injected new life into the battle, but Jacobs knew the Zoraxians would not give up easily. They were formidable opponents, calculating, ruthless, and relentless. "Fire at will," Jacobs commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The battle had reached a fever pitch, and his orders were clear. Humanity was not here to play defense. They were here to win. The U.S. Providence fired its remaining missiles, sending them streaking toward the nearest Zoraxian dreadnought. The missiles detonated in a flash of light, causing the alien vessel to rock violently. The The Zoraxians retaliated with their own missiles, but the U.S. Providence was nimble, its crew reacting quickly to each new threat. But the Zoraxians were not the only challenge on the battlefield. With Earth's fleet now in the mix, the space around them was crowded, filled with explosions, debris, and the wreckage of fallen ships. Navigating through this chaos was a deadly game, and Jacobs couldn't afford any distractions. "Captain, we have incoming," Lieutenant Sanders shouted, pointing to a new fleet of Zoraxian reinforcements emerging from hyperspace. The new fleet was large, too large to ignore. The Zoraxians had anticipated this, and they had brought their full force to bear. The battle had escalated to a new level. Jacob's instincts kicked in, and he quickly assessed the situation. The incoming fleet was on a collision course with Earth's reinforcements, and they would be caught in a crossfire unless they acted fast. "All ships, form a defensive perimeter around the U.S. Providence," Jacobs ordered, his voice cutting through the noise of the bridge. "We need to protect our flank while we finish off their first wave." Earth's fleet responded immediately, positioning itself between the U.S. Providence and the incoming Zoraxian ships. The two sides clashed with a thunderous roar, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse of space. Energy beams flashed across the battlefield, and explosions erupted in every direction. But the Zoraxians weren't finished. Their ships moved with a terrifying speed and precision, dodging Earth's fire while delivering devastating counterattacks. It was clear they had learned from their earlier mistakes. They were no longer underestimating humanity. Jacobs knew this fight would not be won by sheer force alone. He needed a plan, and fast. "Lieutenant Sanders," Jacobs said, his eyes never leaving the battle, "can we target their command ship? If we take it out, we might be able to cripple their entire fleet." Sanders quickly scanned the battlefield. "The command ship is in the rear, heavily guarded, but it's possible. We just need to get past their defenses." "Then that's our target," Jacobs said, his voice unwavering. "Prepare a full assault. All ships, focus on that command ship. We take it down, and the Zoraxians will be disorganized." With the order given, the Earth's fleet began a coordinated maneuver. A group of ships broke off to flank the Zoraxian command ship, while the others kept up the pressure on the rest of the fleet. The U.S. Providence was at the center of the assault, its remaining weapons firing relentlessly at the enemy. The Zoraxians responded with their own tactics, sending waves of ships to protect their command vessel. It was a battle of attrition, both sides knowing that the first to falter would lose everything. The U.S. Providence dodged and weaved through the incoming fire, launching missile after missile at the Zoraxian ships. The enemy fleet fought back fiercely, but Earth's ships were relentless. Jacobs could see the command ship in his sights. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by a swarm of Zoraxian destroyers. But there was an opening. The Zoraxians had made a critical mistake, underestimating the adaptability of humanity. Jacobs knew this was their moment. "Full speed ahead," he commanded. "All weapons, target that command ship." The U.S. Providence surged forward, cutting through the battlefield with deadly precision. The Zoraxian ships tried to intercept, but the Providence was too fast. The missile barrage continued, relentlessly pounding the Zoraxian fleet. Then, with a well-timed strike, a missile hit the Zoraxian command ship directly, tearing through its hull. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships. The Zoraxian fleet faltered. The destruction of their command ship sent a ripple of panic through their ranks. The once mighty fleet began to disintegrate, ships falling back in disarray. Earth's fleet capitalized on the chaos, launching a final decisive attack. Jacobs stood at the helm, watching as the Zoraxian fleet disintegrated before their eyes. It was a victory, but not without its cost. The U.S. Providence had taken heavy damage, and the battle had been long and brutal. But humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not be crushed, that they would fight with every ounce of their strength. "We did it," Lieutenant Sanders said, his voice filled with disbelief. Jacobs allowed himself a rare smile. but it was tempered with the knowledge that this battle was only one of many. The Zoraxians would be back, but next time they would remember the cost of underestimating humanity. "Victory today," Jacob said quietly, "but the war is far from over." The price of victory. The U.S. Providence drifted in the black void, its once pristine exterior now scarred and battered from the brutal battle. The crew had fought tooth and nail for this victory, but the toll it had taken was evident. Wounded soldiers were tended to by medical teams, while others worked tirelessly to repair the ship's critical systems. It was clear that this would not be a quick fix, but they had survived. No, they had triumphed. Commander Jacobs stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the swirling debris of the battle. The Zoraxian fleet, once a mighty and seemingly unstoppable force, had been shattered. But humanity's victory had come at a cost. Many good men and women had been lost in the conflict, their lives sacrificed for a brighter future. "Captain, we've lost contact with several of the reinforcement ships," Lieutenant Sanders reported, his voice somber. "Some of them didn't make it out of the fight." Jacobs nodded grimly, his mind already processing the weight of the loss. Each life lost was a tragedy, but in the cold vastness of space, they had to keep moving forward. The stakes were too high for grief to consume them. Their success would be remembered, but so would the sacrifices. Humanity was becoming something more, something the galaxy could no longer ignore. "Alert the fleet," Jacobs said, his voice steady. "We need to form up and return to Earth. We've made our statement, but we're not done yet." It had been clear throughout the battle that the Zoraxians had underestimated humanity's resolve, but that would no longer be the case. The message was sent, loud and clear. The galaxy had just witnessed what humans were capable of when pushed to the brink. But Jacobs knew there would be more challenges ahead. This was only the beginning. As the ships began to regroup, Jacobs stood before the star-filled window, watching the debris of the Zoraxian fleet drift away, slowly turning to space dust. For a moment, he allowed himself a brief pause, a breath of relief. They had won. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be trifled with. But just as quickly, the reality set in. The Zoraxians were not the only threat out there. Their victory would not go unnoticed. And with the destruction of the Zoraxian command ship, a power vacuum was sure to create even more dangerous enemies. What would be the cost of humanity's newfound prominence in the galaxy? Suddenly, a beeping sound interrupted Jacobs' thoughts. Lieutenant Sanders was at his side in an instant. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," Sanders reported, glancing at the screen. "It's from an unknown source. Should we accept?" Jacobs frowned. After the battle with the Zoraxians, every ship in the galaxy had to know humanity's strength now. A message from an unknown source could be anything, friend or foe. But his duty was clear. They couldn't afford to back down from any challenge now. "Put it through," Jacobs ordered. The screen flickered to life, and the image of a tall, imposing figure appeared. The alien was unlike any Jacobs had seen before. Its skin was a deep, shimmering blue, and its eyes were glowing with an unnatural light. The being was humanoid in shape, but had an air of ancient wisdom and power about it. It was neither hostile nor welcoming, just coldly observant. "Commander Jacobs of Earth," the alien's voice echoed through the bridge, deep and resonant. "Your victory today has not gone unnoticed. The galaxy has seen what you are capable of. And you have proven one thing: humans are no longer insignificant." Jacobs stood tall, his posture proud but cautious. "We are not just survivors," he replied, his voice unwavering. "We are a force to be reckoned with." The alien's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed, but do not mistake victory for peace, Commander. There are many more in this galaxy who will test your resolve. The Zoraxians were just the beginning. You will have to choose your alliances wisely, or they will choose for you." Before Jacobs could respond, the transmission ended abruptly, the screen returning to the cold, dark emptiness of space. The silence on the bridge was heavy, and Jacobs could feel the weight of the aliens' words hanging in the air. Humanity had emerged victorious, but the path ahead was far from clear. The galaxy was full of powerful forces, and they would not be content with allowing humanity to rise unchecked. Jacobs turned to face his crew, who were watching him intently, awaiting his next move. The battle had been won, but now they faced a new reality, one where they had to navigate the complex web of galactic politics, rival factions, and untold dangers. "Prepare the fleet for departure," Jacobs said, his voice resolute. "We have shown the galaxy our strength, but now we need to prepare for what comes next. We will not be caught off guard again. Humanity is no longer just a player in this galaxy. We will shape our own destiny." The crew moved swiftly, their determination clear. The Zoraxians had been defeated, but the real war was only just beginning. With their newfound power, humanity would have to face even greater threats that would test their very survival. As the U.S. Providence and the rest of the fleet began their journey back to Earth, Jacobs stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the stars. There was no going back now. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's might, and they would never forget it. The dawn of a new era. As the U.S. Providence and its fleet returned to Earth, Commander Jacobs stood once again on the bridge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The galaxy was a vast, unforgiving place, and the mission that had begun with a desperate defense of Earth had now evolved into something far greater: humanity's very survival and place among the stars. The crew had proved they could fight, but what lay ahead was even more challenging. The universe had taken notice. "Commander, Earth is just ahead. We'll be in orbit in approximately 10 minutes, Lieutenant Sanders reported, his voice steady but laced with an undertone of excitement. Jacobs nodded, but there was no smile on his face. The relief of victory had faded, replaced by the cold weight of responsibility. They had shown the galaxy humanity's power, but there was more to be done. Much more. The unknown alien's warning had shaken him to the core. More enemies were out there, and they would not hesitate to challenge humanity. What had begun as a battle against the Zoraxians was only the first act in a much larger drama. "Prepare the fleet for planetary orbit," Jacobs ordered, "and make sure our communication systems are up to full capacity. I want the highest priority briefing on Earth's response to the battle." He turned to face the star chart, his mind racing. This battle may have been won, but the real war was just beginning. The galaxy was not going to simply sit back and let Earth take its place among the stars. The alien emissary's cryptic words replayed in his mind. "Choose your alliances wisely, or they will choose for you." As the fleet began to enter Earth's atmosphere, Jacobs couldn't help but reflect on the journey so far. He'd witnessed the growth of humanity into a true galactic power, but he also saw that humanity's rise would not be free of bloodshed and conflict. Every victory would be hard-won. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers, some known, others still shrouded in mystery. And, as the mysterious alien had said, the Zoraxians were not the only power that would stand in humanity's way. "We are Earth's last line of defense," Jacobs whispered to himself. It was a mantra he had adopted during the darkest moments of the war. Humanity's future now lay in their hands, and it was a future that would require strength, unity, and careful diplomacy. Just as the U.S. Providence docked with Earth's orbital station, an urgent transmission came through. The voice on the other end was familiar, a high-ranking Earth official, General Porter. The general's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Jacobs," the general said, his voice taut. "We've received troubling intelligence. We've intercepted multiple communications from across the galaxy. Some factions are already planning retaliatory strikes against Earth." Jacobs' heart sank. This was what he had feared. The battle with the Zoraxians had sent a message to the galaxy, a message that humanity was no longer weak, no longer defenseless. And some factions, it seemed, didn't like that. "I knew it was only a matter of time," Jacobs said, clenching his fists. "What can we do, sir?" "We've got two options," General Porter replied. "First, we need to fortify Earth's defenses, both in orbit and on the surface. But that's just a temporary solution. The real issue is that we don't know what the other factions are capable of. We need to form alliances before they come for us." Jacob's mind raced. Forming alliances was easier said than done. The galaxy was full of rivalries, old grudges, and distrust. It would take more than just firepower to survive. It would require diplomacy, strategy, and a deft hand in navigating the complicated web of galactic politics. "I'll need the fleet on standby," Jacob said, "and I want a team ready to head to the Galactic Council. We need to see if we can find some allies before it's too late." The general nodded. "We'll prepare Earth's defenses, but you'll have to handle the diplomatic side. The future of humanity depends on it." The transmission ended, and Jacobs turned to face his crew. The quiet hum of the U.S. Providence filled the bridge, and for a brief moment there was silence. The crew had fought hard for this victory, but now they faced a far more complex challenge, one that would test their ability to adapt and survive in a galaxy that was no longer willing to overlook humanity's presence. "Prepare for a meeting with the Galactic Council," Jacobs ordered. "We need to show them that we're more than just a force to be reckoned with. We need to prove that we're a force they want to ally with." As the fleet made its way toward the Galactic Council station, Jacobs couldn't help but wonder what kind of reception they would receive. Would the galaxy view humanity as a rising power, or would they see them as a threat that needed to be eliminated before they grew too strong? The U.S. Providence's engines hummed with quiet anticipation as it entered the Council's space. Jacobs knew that the next chapter in humanity's story would not be written with weapons alone. The fate of Earth and its people would be decided in the halls of diplomacy, where every word and action could tip the balance of galactic power. And as humanity stepped into this new era, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again.